Hello, Chris from My Stamp Lady. I'm here with you with this Carols of Christmas bundle, and I'm doing a whitewashed background over the sheet music stamp that I stamped onto designer series paper. So we have the Carols of Christmas bundle with the coordinating card front thinlits, and if you purchase them together right now, there's a discount. I have the sheet music, I have the layering, circles, thinlet or framelits, and I also have the wood textures paper stack. There are gorgeous pictures in this package of different types of wood textures that you can use. So the first thing I have is my background, and it's 5.5 by 8.5 inches scored at 4.25 inches with crumb cake. So this will be my card base. I'm going to start with this piece. I selected this particular pattern from the Wood Textures DSP pack, and I'm going to stamp over it with my sheet music stamp. I didn't want it to stand out too much, however, I do want it to be noticeable, so I use soft suede ink over the DSP and just ink this right up. Then I'm going to roll it right over onto the paper, and then you'll see the pattern or the image on my wood textures paper. So then after I've done this, you can see there's my music. I pull in the Craft Whisper White ink pad, and that's going to be a little more opaque over it so that it will cover portions, and it will also show through some areas. So with a stamping sponge, I'm picking up some of the white craft ink, and I'm just going to brush it over my entire piece, adding some areas where it's a little bit darker, some areas where there's a little bit less, and spreading it out and get that whitewashed look right over this whole entire piece of DSP that's stamped with the sheet music image. So then once I finish this up, then I can go ahead and start using my, my thinlits to add that frame. There's only one die that you use to get the frame, so I'm going to run it through twice because I want my frame to go around the entire piece, and I'm using the edges of my acrylic plate because that's where it's a little tighter in my Big Shot, and I'm going to get a better cut. And I would also recommend maybe running it through a couple of times. So there's my first one. You can see and I'm pulling the red paper in so you can see it better. You can see that frame around the top, and now I need to use that same die and go in and line it up. There's a couple of holes at the bottom that I'm lining up. So I've placed the die back onto my designer plate, and I noticed that it pulled a little bit, so that's why I adjusted where my paper was sitting, and that way the magnets won't pull that quite so much. Those holes are lined up. There's two little holes, and I have a complete frame for my piece. So I've run that through the Big Shot, and this is what I end up with. And I'm just going to mount that right onto that piece of real red cardstock, and that will highlight that die cut that's around there and show the red through. Got a little piece there that I had to kind of pull out. And I just use my fast fuse. I like how the fast fuse works, but there is always that learning curve with fast fuse. You need to do the check mark. Okay, so there is my frame. There's the red peeking through, and I have my background ready to go. Okay, I have my real red ink, and I'm inking up that piece on earth and just stamping that onto a piece of Whisper White cardstock. Put it kind of in the center because I'm going to use a circle framelit to center that piece on earth, and then just die cut that out. Okay, so let's do the deer. We have actually 3 deer on the card. However, I've already cut out 2, so I am just stamping 1 right now, getting the coordinating die, lining that up, have my circle die, and the scallop circle that's just a little bit larger that I'm going to place on my real red cardstock and run all 3 of these items through. Okay, now I'll be using the tree dies to cut out the trees from crumb cake cardstock. I'm going to cut out 1 of the double set of trees and then 2 of the single trees. And so we'll position that on crumb cake cardstock and run this through my Big Shot. Okay, so I cut one additional tree. So I have the one set of double, the two singles, my deer, I have my sentiment stamped die cut. Okay, I'm using a little bit of the Craft Whisper White ink and a sponge, and I'm adding some ink around the edges of the trees. This is so that these trees just stand out a bit against the background. Okay, so I go ahead and finish sponging the other set of trees, and then we'll bring in that background and start to put everything together. And I have a longer length of ribbon and a shorter length of ribbon to create the bow. So let's put together the sentiment, and I'm just using some fast fuse to place that down on the cardstock mat. And that scalloped circle is just a bit larger, so you can just see it peeking out around the piece on earth. I can go ahead and put this down right in the top in the center, and then leaving some space below for my trees and the ribbon. Then you want to take the one set of double trees, one of the single trees, and I'm adding some fast fuse to those, and I'm going to place those flush down against the background and overlap the sentiment. So you can see that the top of the trees just kind of go up and over that sentiment there. And we will do that to one of the single trees. The other single tree I am going to add once I get the ribbon down, because I'm going to put it over the ribbon. Okay, so I'm placing down that last tree there, finding where I want that to be positioned. You actually take the shorter piece of ribbon when you're doing a bow in two pieces. The shorter piece is the one that I'm laying across the front and then wrapping the two ends to the back side and gluing them down with a mini glue dot. The longer piece is for the bow. It's kind of, people don't realize that it takes a little more ribbon to tie the bow than it takes to cover the bottom of the cardstock. And even when you go the other direction, it's usually the shorter piece that you lay down and place over your cardstock. So I'm just adjusting that a bit just so that it lays flat, or straight, I should say. I can go ahead and put this down because I'm going to tie that ribbon on after I get the other tree and the deer down. That way I know exactly where I want to put that. I was just making sure the card opens correctly. It happens too often, gets put on the wrong way if I don't check. So we put that down, and there's my card so far. A few dimensionals, or two dimensionals, one full one, and then I use just a little bit of a piece of dimensional to go up at the top of that tree, and just to pop that entire tree up over the ribbon, just let it pop out a little bit. And place that right in between the trees, actually a little closer to the double trees. Okay, so now I have that longer length of ribbon, just tuck it underneath, and I can tie a bow to the right hand side. And I like to kind of adjust my bow, take the bow little loops and adjust them a little bit, which I did take some of that off camera because it's kind of boring to watch, but I do adjust my bows and make sure that I have them how I want them to be. Okay, with some scissors, I'll just quickly trim those tails to the length that I want them. And I like to give a little angle to my tails rather than cutting them straight off. So my next step is to add the deer. And I'm just going to use mini glue dots to put down the deer. And I am going to kind of overlap one set of deer and put one deer on by itself. So the single deer goes to the right of the popped up tree and the bow. And then I'll put a mini glue dot under this one, glue this over the other deer, and then add a mini glue dot behind there and position that off to the left side, a little closer to the edge. And I have that over the bow also, the bow that's mounted already. And I have my Peace on Earth card. I have the background with the frame and the sheet music stamped and a little bit of Whisper White craft ink over that. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, Chris, at mystamplady.com. You can find the supplies in my online store at shopwithmystamplady.com. And I hope this has inspired you today. Be sure to visit my blog, mystamplady.com, for printable directions and more inspiration. And thank you so much for watching.